She never expected her quiet afternoon at Mike's corner store to turn into a showdown that would expose a criminal empire, but when 5 members of the notorious Red Dragon's motorcycle gang decided to harass the woman in the wheelchair, they had no idea they were messing with one of the military's most lethal combat specialists. Alexandra Alex Winters had spent years hiding her true identity, masking her abilities behind the facade of a disabled veteran. The wheelchair wasn't a lie. The IED in Afghanistan had taken her legs, but what these bikers didn't know was that she was now an undercover FBI agent investigating their multi-million-dollar weapons trafficking operation. They thought they saw weakness, they saw a target. They circled her like vultures, laughing, taunting, pushing her chair, spilling her groceries. But when their leader, Marcus, the snake, Wilson laid his hands on her shoulders, something snapped in less than 30 seconds. 3 bikers were on the ground, one was unconscious, and their leader was staring down the barrel of his own gun, now firmly in Alex's grip. What happened next would send shockwaves through the criminal underworld, as one woman's quest for justice would dismantle the largest weapons trafficking ring in the Pacific Northwest. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have special story for you. The evening sun cast long shadows across Main Street in Pine Valley, Montana. Alex Winters wheeled herself steadily along the cracked sidewalk, her movements precise and measured. The familiar weight of her concealed Sig Sauer pressed against her lower back, hidden beneath her casual jacket. 3 years in this chair had taught her to adapt to modify every combat technique she'd learned in the military. The wheels weren't a weakness. They were just another tool. Jenny's voice drifted from the cafe doorway. Alex, your usual, the young cafe owner SM's smile was genuine, one of the few real connections Alex had allowed herself to make in this town. Thanks, Jenny. Been one of those days. Alex maneuvered her chair through the entrance, automatically noting exits, sightlines, potential cover. Old habits died hard. Her secure phone buzzed, Agent Cooper's 3rd message today. The weapons shipment they'd been tracking was coming in soon. The Red Dragons were getting sloppy, confident that's why she was here playing the role of a broken veteran in a small Montana town. Nobody looked twice at her, and that's exactly what made her dangerous. The cafe door chimed. Alex's reflection in the window showed 3 men entering leather vests, Red Dragons patches. Her heart rate stayed steady as she sipped her coffee. This wasn't the first time they'd crossed paths, but something felt different today. The energy was wrong. Well, look who it is. Marcus Wilson's voice carried across the cafe, our favorite local hero, the gang leaders. Mock respect dripped with venom. 2 more dragons entered behind him, spreading out in a familiar tactical pattern that made Alex's combat instincts fire. Evening, Marcus. She kept her voice neutral, wheelchair angled for quick movement. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Marcus stepped closer, his breath reeking of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. You know what I can't figure out? He leaned down, invading her space. How someone like you manages to always be around when we're doing business. It's almost like you're watching us. The other patrons were quietly slipping out, leaving only Jenny behind the counter. Her hand likely on the silent alarm Alex could take. All 5 men, she'd run the scenarios 100 times. But it would blow her cover, months of investigation wasted. I live here, Marcus, small town. She shrugged, playing the role she'd perfected. Not many places to be. Rick Razor Thompson, Marcus's right hand, circled behind her chair. Maybe we should help you find somewhere else to be. Sweetheart, accidents happen to people in chairs all the time. Alex's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her armrest. One quick move and she could dislocate Razor's knee. The modified Krav Maga techniques she'd developed worked perfectly from a seated position, but she held back, remembering Cooper's words. The weapons bust is everything we need, the whole network. Marcus grabbed her chair's handles, spinning her to face him. You've got one day to leave town after that. He grinned, revealing gold-capped teeth. Well, let's just say we know people at the VA benefit checks can get lost real easy. The old Alex would have put him down right there. But 3 years of undercover work had taught her patience. Sometimes you had to lose the battle to win the war. She let fear show in her eyes, just enough to be convincing. I understand. She looked down, hating the tremor. She forced into her voice. Please, I don't want any trouble. Marcus straightened, satisfied. Smart girl, boys. Let's show her what trouble looks like anyway. He nodded to Mike Crusher, Davis the gang enforcer. Crusher grinned, reaching for Alex's chair. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Alex saw everything with crystal clarity. Jenny reaching for the phone, Marcus's smug smile, the way Crusher's weight was shifted forward, leaving him vulnerable. She could end this in seconds. Instead, she forced herself to flinch as Crusher grabbed her chair and tilted it. Spilling her onto the floor, coffee splashed across the tiles. The gang's laughter echoed off the walls as Alex lay there playing helpless, burning their faces into her memory. Each one would pay, but not today. Today she was building their confidence, letting them think they were untouchable. She'd learned in Afghanistan that the deadliest predators were patient oops. Crusher laughed. Looks like someone needs one of those, I've fallen, and I can't get up buttons. Alex struggled to right herself, making it look difficult. Every instinct screamed at her to fight back, but the mission came first. It always had, as she finally pulled herself back into her chair. Marcus leaned down one last time. Remember one day, then we stopped being nice. He straightened her chair with mocked courtesy. Let's roll, boys, our friend here needs to pack. The dragon swaggered out, leaving behind the stench of leather and cruelty. Only when their motorcycles roared away did Alex let her mask slip slightly. Jenny rushed over with towel, her face flushed with anger. Alex, I'm so sorry I called Chief Anderson. He's on his way. Those bastards can't just... It's okay. Jenny. Alex's voice was steady now, her eyes hard as she watched the bikes disappear around the corner. Everything's exactly the way it needs to be. Her phone buzzed again. Cooper, the weapon shipment, was confirmed for tomorrow night. The Dragons had just made their biggest mistake, but they didn't know it. Yet they thought they'd intimidated a helpless woman. Instead, they'd given her the perfect excuse to be anywhere in town watching them under the guise of leaving. Alex smiled slightly as she dried herself off. Sometimes the best weapon was letting your enemy think they'd already won. Night had fallen over Pine Valley as Alex wheeled herself into her small ranch house on the outskirts of town. The modest home, carefully chosen for its clear sight lines and multiple escape routes, had been her base of operations for the past 3 years. She locked the door, ran her usual security checks, then finally allowed her shoulders to relax. The burner phone hidden in her chair's compartment buzzed agent. Cooper's voice was tense when she answered. Tell me you didn't engage them. Winters, relax, David. I played my part perfectly. Alex moved to her computer setup, hidden behind a false wall panel. They did exactly what we expected, tried to run me out of town. The weapon shipment is definitely coming tomorrow night. My source says it's big, military, great hardware bound for cartel. Buyers in Mexico. We can't afford any mistakes. Alex's jaw tightened. They threatened to mess with my VA benefits. David Real Original should have seen their faces so proud of themselves for intimidating the poor, helpless veteran. Alex Cooper's tone held a warning. I know the mission comes first. She pulled up surveillance photos of the Dragon's compound. But when this is over, I'm going to teach them some manners after ending the call. Alex wheeled to her bedroom, transferring herself onto the bed with practiced ease. Her legs, or what remained of them, ached with phantom pain, a reminder of that day in Afghanistan that had changed everything. The memories flooded back, bidden her team moving through the dusty streets of Kandahar, the children playing nearby, the flash of metal that caught her eye, an IED trigger man in a window. She'd had a choice: take the shot from her position or run into the open to warn the kids. It wasn't really a choice at all. The explosion had taken her legs, but she'd saved 12 children. The military had called her a hero, awarded her medals. Then they'd quietly approached her about a new mission. Her injuries made her the perfect undercover agent who would suspect a disabled veteran of being one of the FBI's top operatives. A noise outside snapped her back to the present footsteps on gravel. Too deliberate to be casual, Alex reached for her gun, then heard a familiar whistle. "Jenny brought you some dinner," the cafe owner said. When Alex opened the door and information, she wheeled inside, quickly locking up behind her. "The dragons haven't changed their plans." Jenny continued, setting down a bag of food. Marcus was bragging at the bar about some big delivery happening at the old lumber mill tomorrow night around midnight. Alex nodded. Jenny had been her eyes and ears in town from the beginning, one of the few people who knew her true identity. "You're taking a risk helping me like this. Those bastards killed my brother 2 years ago. Bad batch of drugs they were pushing. Police called it an overdose, but I know better." Jenny's eyes hardened. Besides, somebody needs to stand up to them as they ate. Alex's mind worked through scenarios. The lumber mill had too many access points to cover with standard FBI teams. But if the dragons were expecting her to leave town, they'd be less cautious. She could use that. "I need you to do something for me tomorrow," Alex said. Finally, something that might seem strange. Jenny leaned forward. "Name it. I need you to help me spread the word that I'm leaving town. Make it convincing. Pack some boxes in your truck. Make a show of helping me move a diversion." Alex smiled. "They'll be watching. We need them. Confident, distracted when they see me loading up. They'll think they've won, telling and preparing." This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. Later that night, after Jenny left, Alex transferred back to her chair and moved to the hidden wall panel behind it. Alongside her computers hung a modified tactical vest. She'd spent months adapting her combat gear to work from a seated position, every strap, every pocket positioned for maximum efficiency. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Cooper: "Teams in position by 2300 hours. Tomorrow, don't engage early." Alex texted back a simple acknowledgement, then began her preparations. She checked her weapons, reviewed the lumber mill blueprints, and ran through her adapted combat moves. The dragons had no idea that every insult, every threat today had only made her more dangerous. When you've lost your legs, you learn that true strength isn't in standing tall. It's a knowing when to appear weak. She wheeled to her window, watching the stars over the Montana mountains. Tomorrow would change everything. Either she'd bring down one of the largest weapons trafficking operations in the country, or she'd blow 3 years of deep cover work. And if things went wrong, her wheelchair wouldn't be an excuse, it would be her coffin. The phantom pain returned stronger this time. Alex closed her eyes, remembering the hospital after the explosion. The doctors had told her she'd never serve again. Never run again, never fight again. They didn't understand that taking her legs had only made her more determined. The dragons had made the same mistake today as assuming that her disability made her weak. Her phone lit up with another message, this one from an unknown number. A photo appeared: Alex at the cafe today, on the ground after Crusher had tipped her chair. The caption read, "Tomorrow is your last chance." Alex smiled coldly in the darkness. The dragons thought they were hunters, but they had no idea what was hunting them tomorrow. They would learn that the deadliest predator is the one they never see coming. She began her final equipment check. Each piece of gear had been modified, tested, perfected her. Wheelchair itself was a weapon-reinforced frame, hidden compartments, custom modifications that turned it from a medical device into a combat platform. Anyone who looked at her saw weakness. They never noticed the warrior hiding in plain sight. The night deepened as Alex ran through her mental preparations. Tomorrow would require perfect timing, perfect control, one mistake, and the whole operation would collapse. But she'd been training for this moment since the day she'd woken up in that hospital bed. The dragons thought they'd scared her into running. Instead, they'd given her exactly what she needed, an excuse to be anywhere in town, watching their every move as she finally prepared for bed. Alex thought about Jenny's brother, about all the lives the dragons had destroyed with their operation. Tomorrow wasn't just about the weapons bust. It was about justice, about showing that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one they've already dismissed. She set her alarm, knowing that in 24 hours everything would change. The dragons were about to learn a lesson about underestimating their enemies, and Alex Winters, the disabled veteran they'd mocked, would be their teacher. Dawn broke over Pine Valley with a blood-red sky. Alex watched the sunrise from her porch, sipping black coffee, as she observed two of Marcus's men trying to be inconspicuous in their surveillance of her house. They'd been there since 5:00 a.m., parked in a blue pickup truck thinking they were invisible. Amateur Hour, her secured tablet, displayed the latest intelligence from Cooper. The weapon shipment was massive enough firepower to supply a small army RPGs, modified assault rifles, even prototype military hardware that wasn't supposed to exist outside of classified facilities. The question that had been nagging at her for months remained. How were the dragons getting their hands on this level of equipment? The burner phone rang. "Alex, we've got movement." Jenny's voice was hushed. Marcus just had a meeting with someone at the diner, suit and tie type. Definitely not local. They passed something under the table description, mid-50s military-bearing expensive watch seemed real interested in the lumber mill delivery called Marcus' son. A couple times, Alex's mind raced. The missing piece was starting to form. "Jenny, I need you to get that coffee pot ready. Our plan starts." Now an hour later, Alex wheeled down Main Street, making sure the dragon surveillance team had a clear view. She'd packed 2 large boxes on her lap, making a show of struggling with them, right on cue. Jenny pulled up in her pickup truck bed, already loaded with furniture last load. "Alex," Jenny called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I can't believe you're really leaving. No choice." Alex projected defeat into her voice. "Can't stay where I'm not wanted." They played their parts perfectly, the concerned friend helping the intimidated veteran pack up and leave town. Alex caught glimpses of phones being used, messages being sent. The dragons were buying it, spreading the word that they'd successfully driven her out by noon. Half the town had heard she was leaving. Alex wheeled into the cafe one last time. Keeping up appearances, the place was unusually busy. Seemed like everyone wanted to say goodbye to the disabled veteran who'd become a familiar sight over the past 3 years. Chief Anderson approached her table, coffee in hand. He was one of the few who knew her true identity. Essential backup for what was coming. "Heard you're skipping town," he said loudly enough to be overheard. Then much quieter. "Teams are in position. Coast Guard intercepted the decoy shipment they sent up north." Alex nodded slightly, maintaining her defeated expression. "Sometimes you just know when you're not welcome anymore." "Chief," the bell chimed as Marcus and Razor walked in, their timing. Too perfect to be coincidence. They wanted to witness their victory firsthand. Alex felt Razor's eyes on her, watching for any sign that this was an act she gave him what he wanted. A flinch. A quick look away, hands trembling slightly on her wheels. Marcus swaggered over, clearly enjoying himself. "Moving day. Huh, smart choice." He leaned down, voice dropping to a whisper, but just to make sure you don't get lost on your way out. He slipped the phone into her lap. "Keep it on you, we'll be checking a tracking device." Alex had expected something. "Like this, please." She let her voice crack. "I'm leaving just like you wanted." "Of course you are." Marcus straightened, smirking. "Boys, help the lady pack up. Let's make sure she gets everything." Crusher and Tommy Ghost Parker appeared at her sides, their helpful gestures carrying clear threats. They followed her and Jenny back to the house, watching as they loaded the last few boxes Alex had prepared for this, making sure they saw exactly what she wanted them to see. clothes photos, personal items, all carefully staged as afternoon faded into evening. Alex made her final appearance on Main Street. The Dragon's surveillance had relaxed. Confident in their victory, she'd seen Marcus checking the tracking phone twice, watching her dot move exactly as expected. What they didn't know was that the phone was now attached to Jenny's truck heading north on the highway. Meanwhile, Alex's real operation was about to begin. Back in her house, she activated the hidden panel revealing her tactical gear. The lumber mill security cameras compromised months ago showed increased activity trucks moving in and out Dragons setting up for the midnight delivery. They were so focused on watching her leave town, they never noticed the careful positioning of FBI teams, the subtle movement of local police into strategic locations. Her secure phone lit up with a message from Cooper. Confirmation on your mystery man Robert Sullivan, former Army colonel dishonorably discharged 3 years ago after an investigation into missing weapons, never prosecuted. The pie clicked into place. Sullivan was their source. A bitter ex-military officer with access codes and contacts using the Dragons as his distribution network. His appearance today wasn't an accident, he was overseeing the biggest shipment yet. Alex began her final preparations. The modified tactical vest slid on smoothly, each piece of equipment precisely where she needed it. Her wheelchair, stripped of its civilian disguise, now showed its true nature: reinforced frame, puncture-proof tires, hidden compartments holding enough firepower to take down a small army. The sun was setting as she ran through her mental checklist one last time. The Dragons thought she was running scared already, miles away on the highway north. Instead, she was about to become their worst nightmare. Her phone buzzed a message from Marcus to the tracking phone. "Keep driving, sweetheart. Don't stop until you hit Canada." Alex smiled in the growing darkness. The Dragons had spent all day watching her leave, never realizing they were the ones being watched. In a few hours their empire would crumble, and they'd learned too late that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one they've already dismissed. The real operation was about to begin. Darkness settled over the lumber mill like a shroud. Alex positioned herself in the shadows of an abandoned office building, her wheelchair completely silent on the gravel thanks to its special modifications. Through her night vision scope, she counted 12 Dragons patrolling the perimeter. All armed with military-grade weapons, they'd stepped up their security tonight. Sullivan's influence, no doubt control. "I have eyes on the primary entrance," she whispered into her secure Cal multiple Tango heavy weapons. "They're expecting trouble." Cooper's voice crackled in her ear. "Sullivan just arrived, black SUV, diplomatic plates. He's not even trying to hide anymore." Alex watched Sullivan emerge from his vehicle, his military bearing obvious. Even at this distance, he walked like a man who'd never lost his command presence, inspecting the Dragon's setup with clear disapproval. Marcus trailed behind him, trying to look important. The shipment, late Sullivan's voice carried clearly through Alex's directional microphone. "Your people better not have screwed this up, Marcus. The buyers aren't known for their patience. Relax, old man." Marcus replied, lighting a cigarette. "Ghost is escorting them in personally. 20 minutes tops." Alex's mind raced. Ghost wasn't at the mill, which meant the real shipment was coming from a different direction. The convoy they were all watching for was a decoy. "Cooper," she whispered. "Check the back roads near Miller's Creek. Ghost would use the old logging trails on it. A pause. Damn, you're right. Thermal imaging shows 3 trucks moving through the forest. They're bypassing all our checkpoints." Alex smiled grimly. The Dragons weren't completely amateur after all, but their clever route had a fatal flaw. It would force them to cross open ground between the tree line and the mill's loading dock. Perfect. She began moving her wheelchair, absolutely silent, as she repositioned. Years of training had taught her to use terrain to her advantage, and her lower profile in the chair actually helped her stay hidden. The Dragons were all looking for threats at standing height. Nobody thought to check ground level. A new voice crackled over her. "See Agent Winters, this is Team Bravo. We've got movement at the North End Ranch. 4 SUVs, cartel plates, the buyers." Alex confirmed, "Right on schedule." Hold position until my Mark Sullivan was getting agitated, checking his watch repeatedly. Where the hell is Ghost? The buyers are here. Patience. Colonel Marcus sneered, emphasizing the rank Sullivan no longer held. Not everything runs on military time. Alex could see the rage flash across Sullivan's face. Interesting. There was tension between them. She filed that away as potentially useful. The first rumble of engines emerged from the Forest Ghost's convoy, right where she'd predicted 3 black trucks running dark using the terrain for cover. They'd planned this well, but they hadn't planned for her. All units hold position, she whispered. Wait for my signal. The next few minutes were crucial. The buyers were approaching from the north. Ghost's convoy, Bo from the south. Sullivan and Marcus stood exposed in the middle, waiting to oversee. The exchange, one wrong move, would send them all scattering. Alex watched through her scope. As Ghost's trucks emerged from the tree line, the lead vehicle's headlights flashed twice a signal. The buyers' SUVs responded with their own flash. The trap was about to close, but not the one the Dragons had planned command. I'm moving to position 2, Alex whispered, wheeling silently through the shadows. Her chair's custom suspension handled the rough terrain, perfectly keeping her stable as she positioned herself behind a stack of lumber. She could see everything now. The buyers approaching cautiously Ghost's convoy, rolling in from behind Sullivan and Maris in the middle of it. All the pieces were in place. Years of planning, months of undercover work, all coming down to this moment, sir. A new voice on the comm. We've got a problem. Second buyer group approaching from the east, not part of the plan. Alex's blood ran cold. A second group meant this wasn't just a sale, it was an auction. The Dragons were playing both sides, driving up the price by making the buyers compete. It was clever, but it also meant twice as many armed hostiles about to converge on their position. Cooper, she whispered, we need to move now. If those groups meet, this turns into a shooting gallery. Negative, Cooper replied. We don't have containment on the second group. Hold position. Alex watched as the situation grew more volatile. The first buyer group had spotted the second, and hands were moving to weapons. Sullivan was shouting at Marcus, who had drawn his own gun. Ghost's convoy had stopped caught in the middle. Then she saw it. The slight nod between Sullivan and the second buyer group. This wasn't just an auction gone wrong, it was a double cross. Sullivan was playing everyone. Cooper Sullivan's working with the second group. This is about to go hot. Before Cooper could respond, Sullivan drew his weapon and aimed it at Marcus's head. Did you really think I needed you people anymore? He snarled. You're just the delivery boys. My real partners are here now. The lumber mill erupted into chaos. The first buyer group opened fire thinking they'd been set up. Ghost's convoy drivers scrambled for cover. Marcus's men started shooting at anything that moved. Alex stayed perfectly still. Her military training taking over. Let them fight each other. Let them thin their own numbers. The real trap wasn't the FBI surrounding them. It was the crossfire they'd created themselves through her scope. She watched Sullivan backing away from the firefight, moving toward a side exit. He wasn't surprised by the chaos. This was his plan all along. Let the gangs kill each other. Take the weapons and disappear in the confusion. Cooper, she whispered. Sullivan's making his move permission to engage. There was a long pause filled with the sound of gunfire. Finally, Cooper's voice, do what you have to do. Just stay alive. Alex smiled grimly, unlocking her chair's hidden compartments. It was time to show them what a disabled veteran could really do. The lumber mill had become a war zone. Muzzle flashes lit up the night as 3 different groups exchanged fire, their shots echoing off the metal buildings. Alex moved through the chaos like a ghost, her wheelchair's dark coating blending with the shadows. Sullivan was heading for the eastern exit. Thinking he'd orchestrated the perfect distraction, he was wrong. Alex positioned herself behind a forklift, watching Sullivan's route. He moved like the soldier he used to be, staying low using cover. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He was looking for threats at eye level. Nobody ever looked down. Team Bravo, maintain fire on the main group, she whispered into her C. Keep them pinned down. I'm handling Sullivan. A bullet pinged off the forklift above her head. The first buyer group was spraying ammunition everywhere, more concerned with volume than accuracy. Amateur move, they'd run dry soon. Sullivan was 30 yards away now, moving. Between crates, Alex did some quick math: trajectory, wind speed, distance. Her modified rifle was perfectly balanced for chair height shooting. The recoil compensator designed for her unique position. She hadn't missed a shot in 3 years going explosive. She warned Command 3, 2-1. The flashbang sailed through the air, its arc perfect. It landed exactly where she'd calculated, 3 FT behind Sullivan. He noticed too late the explosion was deafening. Sullivan staggered, disoriented. That's when Alex made her move. Her wheelchair could hit 30 meters on flat ground, silent as death. She crossed the distance in seconds, ramming directly into Sullivan's legs. The impact sent him sprawling, his weapon clattering away. What the Sullivan blinked, trying to focus, his eyes widened as he recognized her. The from town, Alex's first strike, caught him in the throat, a modified knife hand attack, perfectly adapted Ed for her seated position. Sullivan gagged, stumbling backward. Surprise, she said coldly, blocking. His clumsy counterattack, her next hit, targeted his knee. She knew from experience how vulnerable legs could be. Sullivan went down hard. He was trained, but he'd never fought someone like her. Every move she'd learned in the military had been rebuilt, redesigned for maximum efficiency from a wheelchair. His experience was working against him. He kept trying to adjust for a standing opponent, federal agent. She announced, securing his wrists with zip ties. You're under arrest. You're FBI. Sullivan laughed through his pain. They're really scraping the bottom. Now Alex tightened the zip ties deliberately. Actually, I'm the one who's been tracking your operation for 3 years. Those weapons you've been stealing, we've got every serial number, every buyer, every corrupt officer on your payroll. A burst of gunfire interrupted them. The firefight was intensifying. Marcus had realized Sullivan's betrayal and was leading his dragons in a full assault on the second buyer group Cooper. Alex called. Through her C, Sullivan is secured, moving to Phase 2. Copy that teams are in position. Hit them hard. Alex zip-tied Sullivan to a support beam, then moved back toward the main fight. The dragons were caught between the 2 buyer groups, taking heavy fire. Perfect. She reached into her chair's hidden compartment and removed a small drone controller. 3 years of preparation had gone into this moment. Every shadow of the lumber mill concealed a surprise. All units gas masks on, she ordered. Then she pressed the button. Smoke canisters detonated simultaneously across the lumberyard, filling the air with thick white clouds. The dragons and buyers panicked, shooting blindly into the smoke. But Alex could see everything through her tactical display. Her wheelchair's modifications proved their worth as she moved through the chaos. The rubber-coated wheels were silent on the concrete, the reinforced frame deflecting stray rounds. She was a ghost in the smoke, striking and vanishing the first. Dragon went down to a perfectly placed shot to the leg. The second caught an elbow to the solar plexus as she glided past. Years of combat training combined with her unique perspective made her nearly invisible to the standing fighters. Contact left. Someone shouted, "The feds in a chair." A what? Marcus's voice was incredulous. Find her, but finding Alex in the smoke was impossible. She'd designed her wheelchair to be virtually silent, its profile too low for traditional combat tactics. Every disadvantage they thought she had became an advantage. The smoke was starting to clear when she spotted Marcus trying to rally his men. He was shouting orders, attempting to organize a retreat. Not this time. Al moved into position, her rifle steady, one shot to disable, just like she'd practiced thousands of times. The round caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. Winters Cooper's voice was urgent in her ear. Second buyer group is making a break for it. They've got 3 crates of weapons. Not happening, Alex replied already. Moving her chair's electric motor could outpace a running man, and she knew the lumber mill's layout better than any of them. She cut through the warehouse, taking a route they wouldn't expect. The buyers would head for the south exit. It was the only way that seemed clear, but Alex had prepared for this command-execute containment protocol Delta she ordered. Wheeling into position. Let's show them why you don't underestimate someone just because they're in a chair. The night was about to get very interesting. The second buyer group ran straight into Alex's trap as they rushed for the south exit motion sensors, triggered automated barricades, sealing them in. Their confusion was evident as heavy metal gates slammed down, blocking their escape. What the hell? The group's leader spun around, searching for another way out. They had 3 crates of weapons, but nowhere to run. Alex's voice came through hidden speakers surrounding them. Federal agents, drop your weapons and get on the ground. Instead, they opened fire bullets, ricocheting off metal walls. Alex watched through her tactical display as they wasted ammunition on shadows. 3 years of planning had turned this lumber mill into her personal combat zone. Poor choice, she muttered. Activating the next phase, the sprinkler system activated, but it wasn't water that rained down a specially designed sedative. Mist filled the air. The buyers stumbled their shots, going wild as the drug took effect. Within seconds, half of them were on their knees. Control South Sector contained. Alex reported moving to her next position. How's the main fight? Cooper's response was tense. Marcus rallied some of his men. They've got Ghost's weapons. Convoy, and they're trying to break through the east perimeter. Alex smiled grimly. Not for long, she wheeled silently through the warehouse, taking a parallel route to Marcus's group. Her chair's custom suspension handled the debris-strewn floor with ease, keeping her stable as she moved into position through the gaps in the crates. She could see Marcus leading 6 dragons toward the east gate. They were dragging weapon crates, moving as fast as they could, while carrying the heavy loads. Marcus's shoulder was bleeding from her earlier shot, but rage and adrenaline kept him going. "This is impossible!" he was shouting, one fed in a wheelchair. "She can't be doing all this, boss! We need to drop the crates!" One of his men gasped. "We're too slow! Touch those crates and I'll kill you myself!" Marcus's voice was desperate. "Now this is our ticket to the big leagues." Alex keyed her calm. "Cooper, I've got eyes on Marcus, moving to intercept. Be careful, winners. He's cornered and desperate." Alex positioned herself at the end of the row, calculating angles. Her wheelchair gave her an advantage. They hadn't considered she could shoot from underneath the storage racks. Through gaps they'd never think to check. The first dragon went down. With a shot to the leg, crying out in surprise, the second caught a round in the shoulder before they even realized where the fire was coming from. "Down, get down!" Marcus screamed, finally dropping his crate. "Find!" Her Alex was already moving, circling to their flank. Her chair's silent motor gave her perfect mobility while they crashed around like bulls in a china shop. She picked them off one by one, non-lethal shots, just like she'd trained. Marcus was the last one standing, spinning wildly, trying to locate her. "Show yourself," he roared. "Face me like a real fighter, okay?" The word came from behind him as he turned. Alex's chair burst through a stack of empty boxes before he could raise his weapon. She was on him. Her first strike caught him in the wrist, sending his gun flying. The second, a modified leg sweep she'd perfected, took out his knee. Marcus went down hard, staring up at her in disbelief. How you're just a Alex's next strike silenced him, a precise hit to the jaw that she'd practiced countless times. "I'm the who just brought down your entire operation," she said calmly, securing his wrists, "and I did it all without standing up." Agent Winters Cooper's voice was urgent. "We've got a problem. Sullivan's loose." Alex's head snapped up. "What? How? He had help. One of the guards was on his payroll. They're heading for the north loading dock." Alex quickly zip-tied Marcus to a support beam. "Not for long. This ends tonight." She moved through the warehouse with renewed purpose. Sullivan was the key to everything. The weapons source, the military connections, the corrupt officials. They needed him alive and talking. The north loading dock was the mill's highest point, overlooking the entire complex. As she approached, she could hear helicopter rotors in the distance. Sullivan had an escape plan. "Cooper, I need backup at the north dock," she called, "and someone get me eyes on that chopper." But as she reached the dock's entrance, something felt wrong. The door was open, but no guards were visible. Sullivan was too good a soldier to leave himself exposed like this. It was a trap, and Alex was rolling right into it. The first shot caught her chair's armored backrest, proving her paranoia right. Sullivan had set up a kill zone expecting her to rush in, but he'd made one critical mistake. He still thought she needed the chair to fight. Alex smiled in the darkness, time to show them what a disabled veteran could really do. The helicopter's searchlight swept across the loading dock, casting harsh shadows. Sullivan had positioned his remaining men well. 3 shooters with clear lines of fire covering every apparent approach. But Alex hadn't survived Afghanistan by being predictable. Cooper maintained radio silence unless emergency. She whispered, going dark. She detached her chair's backup battery pack, a custom piece of equipment that looked innocent but contained enough explosive power to breach a steel door. Years of being underestimated had taught her to weaponize everything people assumed was medical equipment. The first guard never saw it coming. The battery pack sailed through the air, detonating against the wall behind him. The explosion wasn't lethal, but the concussive force and shower of debris sent him sprawling. More importantly, it drew everyone's attention up exactly where Alex wasn't. She was already moving, sliding from her chair into a practiced combat crawl. Her upper body strength, developed through years of adaptation, led her move silently across the concrete floor. Sullivan's men were still staring at the explosion site, never thinking to look down. "Where is she?" One of them hissed, "The has to be in that chair." Alex allowed herself a grim smile as she pulled herself behind a crate. People's assumptions about disability were always there. Weakness. The chair wasn't her prison. It was just one of many tools Sullivan's voice carried from above. "Find her, that helicopter's our only way out." The searchlights swept back and forth, creating moving shadows that Alex used for cover. She reached up to a hidden pocket in her tactical vest, removing 3 small devices that looked like gaming dice. Another custom-design electromagnetic pulse generators disguised as medical equipment. The first one rolled under the helicopter, its magnetic surface clicking quietly against the landing strut. The second and third followed different paths, positioning themselves around the loading docks. "Power distribution box, boss. We need to go." One of Sullivan's was getting nervous. "FBI teams are closing in. Not without those weapons manifests." Sullivan growled, "There are insurance policy, and not without putting that federal in the ground." Alex triggered the EMPs. The loading dock plunged into darkness as the power died. The helicopter's electronics sputtered and failed, its rotors winding down with a whine in the chaos that followed. Alex made her move. She pulled herself up onto a loading pallet using the height advantage. The first guard was 3 feet away, night vision goggles rendering him blind in the sudden darkness. Alex's strike to his cord artery was precise. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. The second guard spun toward the sound, but Alex was already moving. She used his own momentum against him, a technique she'd modified from her Marine combat training. From the ground, she could target knees and ankles with devastating efficiency. He went down hard. It's a trap. The third guard's panic was evident. She's not in the chair. She's his warning cut off as Alex's garrote wire caught him across the chest, pulling him down to her level. A quick strike to the temple ended his resistance. Sullivan's voice cut through the darkness. "Very impressive, Agent Winters, using your disability as a tactical advantage, but you've got it wrong. This was my trap." Lights suddenly blazed from hidden positions. Alex found herself caught in multiple spotlights temporarily. Blinded as her eyes adjusted, she saw Sullivan standing on the loading dock's upper level, holding a tablet computer, looking for this. He waved the tablet. Every weapon shipment, every buyer, every corrupt official, all the evidence you spent 3 years collecting encrypted. Of course, the passwords die with me. Alex stayed low, analyzing angles and distances. "You really think that tablet is your way out? The whole mill is surrounded." Sullivan laughed. "You still don't get it. Why do you think I let you track this operation for 3 years? Why do you think we let you get so close?" A chill ran down Alex's spine as the implications hit her. You knew from the beginning. Of course we knew you think you're the first agent they've sent, but you were perfect. The disabled veteran so determined to prove herself, every move you made, every bit of evidence you gathered, it all went exactly where we wanted it. Alex's mind raced. 3 years of investigation, all the evidence stored on secured. Servers that someone else had access to. Your boss agent. Cooper Sullivan's smile was cold. He's been working for us from the start right now. He's wiping every server, eliminating every connection by sunrise. None of this will have existed. The sound of approaching vehicles grew louder. But they weren't FBI trucks. The engines were wrong. More of Sullivan's men. So you see, Agent Winters, your greatest weakness wasn't your disability. It was your trust in the system. The same system that sent you to Afghanistan, that took your legs, that made you think you could make a difference. Alex's hands clenched into fists, everything she'd worked for, every piece of evidence, every sacrifice, all part of someone else's game. But Sullivan had made one critical mistake. He thought this revelation would break her. "You're right about one thing," she said quietly, reaching for her final hidden weapon. "The system failed me. That's why I stopped trusting it." 2 years ago, Sullivan's smile faltered. What Cooper wasn't the only one playing both sides. Every piece of evidence I sent him copies went to someone else, someone even you can't touch now. It was Alex's turn to smile. Did you really think a disabled veteran would trust the system that betrayed her without a backup plan? The real operation was about to begin. Sullivan's confident smirk faded as his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face darkening. "What did you do?" "Check your secure servers," Alex said calmly, still positioned on the ground, every single one. Sullivan's fingers flew across his phone, his expression growing more desperate with each swipe. "Impossible. These are military-grade firewalls, and I had 3 years to crack them. Everything you've done, every weapon you've sold, every official you've bribed, it's all being uploaded to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country. Right now, a new sound cut through the night, different helicopters coming in fast, not Sullivan's backup. These were military birds. Those aren't FBI helicopters," Alex continued. "That's the 160th. Special Operations Aviation Regiment, remember them? Colonel, your old unit, they're very interested in where their missing weapons went." Sullivan's face contorted with rage. "Cooper, get me a secure line to Cooper now. He can't help you." Alex pulled herself behind a crate as Sullivan's men started moving nervously. "He's probably already in custody. See, while you were watching me feed information to Cooper. I was working with someone else, someone who's been hunting you longer than I have." The tablet in Sullivan's hand chirped. His eyes widened as he read the message. "Director Chen, you're working with Internal Affairs." Alex smiled coldly. "For 2 years. Every piece of evidence I collected went to 2 places. Cooper compromised servers and Chen's secure ones. You were so busy watching the crippled agent you never noticed the real investigation." Sullivan's last threads of control snapped. "Kill her, kill her." Now his remaining men opened fire, but Alex was already moving. She'd spent months memorizing every inch of this loading dock, practicing movements. Most people wouldn't think possible without legs. She flowed from cover to cover, using her lower profile to her advantage. 3 years of playing weak. She called out, drawing their fire. 3 years of letting you think I was just a broken veteran. Want to know the truth? She triggered her final surprise, remote charges planted throughout the loading dock. Not explosives, but industrial magnets salvaged from the lumber mill's equipment. They activated with a powerful hum, and suddenly, every weapon with metal components was yanked toward the walls. The truth is, I never needed the chair to fight. I chose it because nobody looks twice at someone they think is helpless. The loading dock had become a killing ground. But not the one Sullivan intended. His men's weapons were useless, pulled away by magnetic forces they couldn't overcome. And Alex was a ghost among them. Striking from below using their own height against them, Director Chen had been building a case against you for years. She explained taking down another guard with a precise strike to the knee, but he couldn't get close. Then I came along. The perfect cover who would suspect the disabled veteran. Sullivan frantically typed on his tablet trying to stop the data upload. I can still delete everything. No, you can't. Alex's voice was closer. Now that tablet hasn't been connected to your real servers for months. It's just for show, like everything else about your operation. The military helicopters were directly overhead now, spotlights flooding the area. Armed figures rappelled down on fast ropes, special forces operators moving with precise efficiency. You know what the saddest part is. Alex emerged from the shadows, pulling herself onto a crate to look Sullivan in the eye. You actually thought my disability was my weakness, but it was my greatest weapon because men like you can never see past it. Sullivan drew a hidden pistol, but Al was faster. Her strike caught him in the wrist, breaking his grip. The second hit took out his knee. A move she'd perfected from her ground-based fighting style as he fell. She caught the tablet, securing it as evidence. Alexandra Winters, a voice called from above, Director Chen sends his regards. The Special Forces team moved in, securing Sullivan and his remaining men. Alex watched as they were zip-tied and processed her part in the operation. Finally complete, one of the operators approached her, offering a hand. Need help getting back to your chair, ma'am? Alex smiled, already pulling herself up, using upper body strength. That would shame most athletes. Thanks, but I've got it. I always did. As Sullivan was led away, he turned back one last time. How he demanded, how did you fool everyone for so long? I didn't fool anyone, Alex replied, settling back into her wheelchair. You fooled yourselves. You saw what you expected to see, a disabled veteran trying to prove herself. You never wondered why someone with my combat record would choose such an obvious cover. The first rays of dawn were breaking over the lumber mill as Alex activated her chair's motor, 3 years of deep cover playing the role they all expected, letting them underestimate her at every turn. But she had never been the victim that they assumed. She had been the hunter all along. Dawn painted the lumber mill in shades of gold as federal agents swarmed the complex. Alex watched from her wheelchair as Sullivan and his men were loaded into armored transports. Director Chen, a sharp-featured man in his 50s, approached her with a tablet displaying real-time data uploads, 17 corrupt officials identified so far. He reported 3 federal judges, 4 state prosecutors, and 2 generals. Your evidence is bulletproof, Cooper. Alex asked, though she already knew the answer, tried to run when the servers went live, got caught. At the Canadian border 20 minutes ago, Chen's expression was, grim. 3 years of your life letting him think he was running you. That's dedication. Alex adjusted her position, her shoulders tight from the night's combat. He wasn't running me. I was feeding him. Everything he thought he was deleting was actually being copied to your secured servers. He led us right to the top. Still, Chen watched as another transport pulled away, living in this town, playing the defeated veteran, letting them mock you day after day. Most agents wouldn't have lasted a month. Alex smiled slightly. Most agents wouldn't have seen the advantage. The wheelchair wasn't my weakness. It was my greatest asset. Nobody suspects the disabled veteran of being a threat. The local news vans were arriving now drawn by the convoys of federal vehicles. Jenny's truck pulled up and the cafe owner rushed over to Alex. My God. Jenny breathed when you said you had a plan. I never imagined all those times they harassed you. At the cafe, we're exactly what we needed. Alex finished every incident, every mockery, every threat. It all built. Their confidence made them sloppy. Chief Anderson approached, looking both impressed and slightly embarrassed. Agent Winters, we had no idea. Even those of us who knew you were FBI didn't realize the full scope. That was the point. Chief Alex turned her chair to face him. The town's reaction had to be genuine. Your officers had to treat me like any other disabled veteran. It made the Dragons believe their own assumptions. More vehicles were arriving. Military intelligence, ATF, even CIA Sullivan's network had tendrils everywhere, and now they were all being exposed. Alex's phone buzzed constantly with updates as operations launched across the country, taking down corrupt officials and arms dealers who thought they were untouchable. Director, a young agent called out, "You need to see this. We found a hidden room in Sullivan's office. Looks like overseas connections." Alex wheeled herself toward the office building, Jenny walking beside her. "You know what this means?" Jenny asked quietly. "You can't stay here now once this hits the news." I know Alex felt a twinge of regret despite everything she'd grown fond of Pine Valley, but the mission was always bigger than one town. Sullivan's operation was just the tip of the iceberg. The hidden room was a treasure trove of intelligence, maps marked with weapons, routes lists of corrupt officials still to be turned, plans for operations that would never happen. Now, on one wall, surveillance photos of Alex herself. At the cafe, at the store, moving through town. Sullivan had been watching her from the beginning, thinking he was the hunter. He never figured it out. Chen mused, studying the photos. Even with all this surveillance, he never realized you were playing him because he saw what he expected to see. Alex picked up a photo of herself looking vulnerable in her wheelchair. That's the thing about prejudice. It blinds you. They were so convinced that the chair made me weak. They never questioned why someone with my combat record would choose such an obvious cover. A commotion outside drew their attention. The first news helicopters were arriving, cameras rolling as federal agents let out more suspects. The story would break nationwide within hours, a disabled veteran single-handedly bringing down one of the largest weapons trafficking operations in history. But Alex knew this was just the beginning. Sullivan's arrest would shake things loose, make other operations nervous. Her phone buzzed with a message from a secured line. "Phase 2 ready. When you are." Jenny noticed her expression. "There's more, isn't there? This isn't over." "It's never over," Alex replied, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Sullivan was right about one thing: the system is corrupt, but that's why we have to fight it from the inside, one operation at a time. She turned her chair toward the exit, already planning. Her next move, the wheelchair hummed softly. As she moved, a sound that had become synonymous with approaching justice behind her, Sullivan's empire crumbled piece by piece. But in other cities, other corrupt officials were watching the news, feeling the first stirrings of fear. Because somewhere out there, a disabled veteran might be watching them too, waiting patiently, letting them believe their own lies about what made someone dangerous. The real work was just beginning. Military helicopters thundered overhead as Alex wheeled into the secure briefing room at Fort Harrison. General Richardson, commander of Special Operations Command, stood before a wall of screens displaying real-time data from raids across the country. His face was grim, as satellite footage showed more weapons caches being discovered 48 hours since Sullivan's arrest. He announced to the assembled task force, "We've seized over $2 billion in illegal arms, but that's not why I called this meeting." He nodded, too. His aide, who distributed sealed folders, opened them. Alex's blood ran cold as she reviewed the contents. Surveillance photos showed heavily armed men entering safe houses across Europe and Asia. "Sullivan's backup plan," she said quietly. He had sleeper cells correct. Agent Winters Richardson pointed to a map showing red dots spreading like a virus the moment we moved on the lumber mill. "These cells activated. They're not just arms dealers. They're mercenaries. Ex-military trained by Sullivan himself. How many? At least 200 that we know of, all equipped with classified weapons and tech stolen over the years, and they have one primary objective." He met Alex's eyes. The room fell silent. Alex continued reading the intel, her face betraying no emotion. Sullivan's network was larger than anyone had imagined. The lumber mill operation hadn't just been about weapons. It had been a test. Watching how she operated, there's more. Richardson continued. "Sullivan's been talking, says there's another player involved, someone even. He feared a former CIA wetworks operator. Coden named the architect. This person's been building a private army using Sullivan's weapons pipeline." Director Chen leaned forward. "Do we have an ID on the architect?" "Negative. But we found this in Sullivan's personal files." A new image appeared on screen. A burnt-out village in Afghanistan. Alex recognized it immediately. Her hands gripped her wheelchair's arms until her knuckles went white. "That's where I lost my legs," she said. Softly, the IED wasn't random. No, it wasn't. Richardson confirmed the architect arranged it. They knew you were getting close to Sullivan's operation. Back then, the explosion was meant to kill you, Agent Winters, when it didn't. You became an obsession for them these 3 years you spent undercover. They were watching, learning. Alex's mind raced every interaction with the dragons. Every carefully planned move, she thought she'd been the hunter instead. Someone else had been, studying her techniques, her adaptations, her combat style. A junior analyst burst into the room. "Sir, we've got multiple breaches. Someone's hacking our secure servers." Screens flickered and died across the room. When they reactivated, a single message appeared. "Did you think Sullivan was the end game?" Alexandra alarms blared throughout the base. "We've got incoming." Someone shouted, multiple armed contacts breaching the perimeter. "Get Agent Winters to the secure bunker," Richardson ordered, but Alex was already moving her wheelchair, humming as she accelerated toward the door with respect. "General, that's exactly what they want," she said. "They're hurting us. This isn't an attack, it's a demonstration." As if confirming her words, the attackers never breached the building. They vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind only a tablet, displaying more surveillance photos. Alex in Pine Valley, Alex at the lumber mill, Alex taking down Sullivan's men. They've been one step ahead. The whole time, Chen realized Sullivan's arrest, the weapon seizures. It was all part of their plan. "Not quite," Alex replied, studying the photos they made, the same mistake Sullivan did. "They thought the wheelchair made me predictable." She turned to Richardson. "General, I need everything you have on CIA wetworks operations in Afghanistan from 5 years ago. Every operator, every mission that's beyond classified Agent Winters. So is the prototype weapons technology. They stole technology. I'm betting wasn't just lying around in Sullivan's warehouses." She fixed Richardson with a steady gaze. "Someone inside military intelligence has been feeding them." Intel someone high up. The general's face hardened as the implication sank in. Too many people had access to the classified files, too many opportunities for corruption. "How do we find a leak that high up?" Chen asked. "We don't," Alex replied. "We let them find us." She wheeled to the central console, bringing up a map of known weapons, caches. "The architect wants to prove they're smarter than us. Fine. Let's give them a game they can't resist." She began marking locations, creating a path. "These sites are too exposed. The architect will assume we'll raid them first, so we leak the operation plans. Let them think they know our playbook. And while they're watching those sites," Richardson nodded slowly, "we strike where they least expect it." Alex pulled up another map, hidden facilities. Even Sullivan hadn't known about the architect. Has a god complex. They want to prove they can outthink a disabled AG agent who dared to challenge their operation. So let's use that. The plan was audacious, dangerous. If they were wrong about the architect's psychology, it would fail catastrophically. But Alex had spent 3 years being underestimated. She knew how to use assumptions against her enemies. "General," she said quietly, "I need you to trust me, even when it looks like I've gone." Rogue. Richard studied her for a long moment. "The architect has people inside military intelligence. Inside the FBI, probably inside this room. You're asking me to risk everything on a hunch." "No, sir. I'm asking you to risk everything because the architect is building an army. Those weapons they stole, they're not for sale. They're for something bigger." The general nodded slowly. "Do it." But Agent Winters, he stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Be careful, the architect didn't just fail to kill you in Afghanistan. They turned you into the perfect weapon. A disabled veteran that everyone underestimates. Don't let them finish what they started." Alex smiled grimly as she wheeled toward the door. "They won't see me coming. Nobody ever does." The next phase was about to begin. And this time, Alex wasn't just hunting arms dealers. She was hunting the person who had taken her legs, who had spent 3 years studying her every move. What do we know about the architect's psychological profile? Alex studied the classified files spread across the secure terminal. Her wheelchair positioned at a custom-height desk in the FBI's mobile command center outside Pine Valley had become a ghost town as residents stayed indoors, spooked by the military presence. Former CIA psychological operations expert Chen replied, bringing up heavily red-rected documents specialized in breaking down enemy command structures from within. They don't just destroy organizations, they redesign them like they're doing with Sullivan's network. Alex mused, taking a weapons trafficking operation and turning it into a private military force. A new alert flashed across the screens. Another weapons cache had been discovered, this time in a suburban California neighborhood. But something felt wrong about the timing they're playing with us, Alex said, wheeling to a different terminal. Every cache we find is perfectly organized, documented. They want us cataloging weapons while they move their real assets. Her secure phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. You're learning, Alexandra, but not fast enough. Seconds later, explosions rocked military bases across 3 states. Not devastating blasts, but precise strikes targeting weapons storage facilities as alerts flooded in. Alex noticed the pattern. They're destroying evidence. She realized every facility we'd marked for investigation, they cleaning house. Chen's face paled as he checked his tablet. We've lost contact with the transport holding Sullivan GPS shows. Them stopped on a mountain road in Idaho. Alex was already moving her wheelchair, humming as she headed for the door. Get me a helicopter now, Alex? Wait, Chen called after her. This is exactly what they want to isolate you, draw you out good. Alex checked her chair's hidden compartments, verifying her weapons were secure because I'm tired of playing defense. 20 minutes later, she was in a Black Hawk soaring over dense forest towards Sullivan's last known location. The transport's GPS signal hadn't moved, which meant either an ambush or something worse. 5 minutes to target. The pilot announced, Ma'am, are you sure about this? We've got gunships on standby. No backup, Alex replied, checking her tactical vest. The architect has too many eyes and official channels. This has to look real. The transport came into view, stopped on a narrow mountain road, its escort, vehicles still in formation, no signs of combat, no bodies, just silence. Set me down. 50 yards back, Alex ordered. Then get clear. Whatever happens next, maintain radio silence. She wheeled down the cargo ramp onto rough terrain, her chair's enhanced suspension handling the uneven ground. The modified controls allowed her to move silently, staying in shadows as she approached the transport. The back doors were open inside. Sullivan sat calmly in his restraints, smiling as if he'd been expecting her. Hello, Alexandra, he said quietly. She said you'd come alone. Where is she? The AR architect. Closer than you think. She's been watching you for years. You know, learning. From you, the way you adapted. After losing your legs, the combat techniques you developed, you became her case study in human evolution. Alex's hand moved closer to her concealed sidearm. She set the IED. Of course she did, but not to kill you, to transform you. She needed someone exceptional, someone who could demonstrate the true potential of tactical adaptation. Sullivan leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Why do you think she let you investigate me for 3 years? You weren't hunting us? Alexandra, you were teaching us. A twig snapped in the forest. Alex spun her chair, drawing her weapon in one fluid motion, but the shadows remained empty. She's not here, Sullivan continued. This is just another lesson, another test to see how you'll adapt to what. Sullivan nodded toward a tablet lying on the transport floor. See for yourself. The screen showed live feeds from military bases worldwide. In each one, soldiers were discovering their weapons had been replaced with perfect replicas, non-functional decoys switched out over months or years. The real weapons are already distributed, Sullivan said softly, to sleeper cells in every major city. The architect doesn't want to sell arms. Alexandra, she wants to demonstrate how vulnerable the system really is. And you helped her do it. Alex's mind raced every cache they'd seized, every database they'd captured, all carefully orchestrated. The architect hadn't just been watching her work, she'd been using Alex's investigation to mask her real operation. Why tell me this? Sullivan smiled, because she wants you to understand what's coming next. The chaos, the collapse of Millet AR command structures, it's all part of the evolution she sees in you. The weak systems fall and something stronger emerges. A new message flashed on the tablet ready for your next lesson. Alexandra, suddenly the transport's engine roared to life. The doors began closing automatically as the vehicle started moving. Sullivan's smile growing. "Wider, better move fast," he called out. "You've got about 3 minutes before the charges detonate, just enough time to save me or stop the real operation happening on the other side of the mountain." Alex's chair sensors picked up multiple heat signatures converging through the trees, the architect's forces moving into position. But for what she had to make a choice, and somewhere in the shadows, her true enemy was watching, learning, adapting. The game was changing, and this time, Alex wasn't sure if being underestimated was an advantage or part of someone else's plan. Alex's mind calculated trajectories and probabilities. In the split second after Sullivan's revelation, the transport was accelerating. Down the mountain road, charges primed, behind her heat signatures moved through the trees. The architect's forces closing in, and somewhere on the other side of the mountain, something worse was happening. She made her decision. Sullivan dies anyway, if the charges blow. She muttered, spinning her chair toward the forest. Her tactical display showed 15 hostiles moving in coordinated patterns. Their formation was familiar. She'd used similar approaches during her undercover work. "They're using my own tactics against me." She realized the architect hadn't just studied her methods. She'd trained her forces to think like Alex. Her chair's motor hummed as she accelerated through the underbrush using terrain features she'd normally avoid. They'd expect her to take the most accessible routes, just as she'd done for 3 years, while maintaining her cover time to show them what her chair could really do. The first attacker never saw her coming. Alex emerged from a ditch that should have been impossible to navigate, her modified wheelchair handling the terrain like a tactical vehicle. One precise shot to his knee dropped him instantly. "Contact," someone shouted. "She's in the trees." But Alex was already moving, using her chair's low profile to slip between cover. Points they'd never consider. Her combat adaptations, developed over years of dealing with her disability, had evolved. Beyond standard tactical responses, the architect's forces were fighting a ghost. Echo team. No visual delta. She's not using the paths. How is she moving through this terrain? 3 more attackers went down to precise shots, non-lethal, but debilitating. Alex wasn't just fighting. She was sending a message the architect wanted to learn from her methods. Here was a masterclass. Her tactical display showed the remaining forces regrouping, adjusting their pattern. They were learning, adapting in real time, just as she would have done. Alex's secure phone buzzed a message from the architect. "Excellent improvisation, but you're letting Sullivan escape." The transport was almost out of view now. Taking hairpin turns down the mountain road, Alex had maybe 90 seconds before the charges detonated. "You're not as clever as you think," Alex typed back. "Check your thermal imaging." She'd planted a device on the transport during her brief interaction. A micro-EMP designed to fry electronic detonators. The charges were dead. Sullivan wasn't going anywhere. The response was immediate, impressive, but while you're playing chess, I'm changing the board. Suddenly, Alex's tactical display lit up with new signatures, dozens of them moving through the forest, not toward her, but toward something on the other side of the mountain satellite feed. Accessing her chair's computer, announced the image made her blood run cold. A hidden airfield carved into the mountain. Inside, 3 cargo planes were being loaded with what looked like missile components. The manifests, flashing across her screen, told the story pieces of a weapons system that shouldn't exist, something that could bypass any defense network on Earth. "Now you see the real game." The architect's message continued. Sullivan was a distraction. The lumber mill, the weapons caches, even your 3 years undercover, all of It designed to keep eyes away from this. Alex's mind raced. The architect hadn't just built a private army, she'd created a complete shadow military infrastructure, using Alex's investigation as cover. Every time law enforcement focused on a weapons bust, the architect's real operation grew stronger. "Cooper's giving us a location." Chen's voice crackled through her secure calm. "The architect's command center, some kind of converted missile silo in the Bitterroot Mountains." "It's a trap," Alex replied, still tracking hostile movements through her display. "She wants us to commit resources there, while her real operation launches. What's the play?" Alex studied the satellite feed, noting patterns in the cargo loading. Something wasn't right about the way they were distributing weight unless the missiles are decoys. She realized. Look at the loading pattern, they're not balancing them properly for actual launches. This is another layer of deception. She zoomed in on the cargo bays, enhancing specific sections there. Those containers, they're not weapon components, they're servers, quantum computing cores, the architect's endgames snapped into focus. This wasn't about weapons trafficking or private armies. It was about creating a shadow intelligence network, something that could hack and control any military system in the world. She's not trying to start a war. Alex told Chen she's making sure she can control both sides when it happens. Her chair's sensors picked up new movement. The hostile forces were pulling back, disappearing into the forest as quickly as they'd appeared. The architect was letting her see the bigger picture, knowing it was almost too late to stop it. Almost. "Chen, I need everything we have on quantum computing facilities in the region. Power consumption records, cooling system purchases, anything unusual in the last 3 years already on it." "But Alex, there's something else. We found records of the architect's CIA operations. The village in Afghanistan where you lost your legs, there's more to that story." Alex's hands tightened on her chairs. "Controls tell me the IED wasn't just about taking you out of action. The explosion had a very specific blast pattern. It was designed to damage exactly what it did, nothing more, nothing less." "She wanted me in this chair," Alex said quietly. "Everything since then, my recovery, my adaptation, the new combat techniques I developed. You weren't just her case study. Chen confirmed you were her prototype, the first of a new kind of operative she's creating. There are others. Alex, other disabled veterans being watched, tested, studied. The architect is building an army unlike anything we've seen before." Alex looked at the mountain road where Sullivan's transport had disappeared at the hidden airfield, loading mysterious cargo at the forest, where forces trained in her own tactics had tested her responses. She thought she was the hunter using everyone's assumptions about her disability to her advantage, but someone else had been running a much longer operation. The real question was, what would she do about it? The mobile command center hummed with activity as Alex studied the data streaming across multiple screens, power consumption patterns, satellite thermal imaging, transportation logs, all pointing to something hidden in plain sight. 3 locations, she announced, marking points on the digital map, all showing energy signatures consistent with quantum computing. But they're too obvious. The architect wants us to find them." Chen leaned closer, examining the data decoys, test sites she's watching, how we analyze intelligence, how we plan operations. Alex wheeled to another terminal, pulling up personnel files. "But look at this. Every facility is staffed almost entirely by disabled veterans, specifically recruited given specialized training. The implications were staggering. The architect hadn't just studied Alex's adaptations, she was replicating them on a massive scale, creating an entire force of operatives that everyone would underestimate. Latest from Sullivan's transport, a junior agent reported they found it abandoned 20 mi down the mountain. No charges, no Sullivan. But they did find this. He handed Alex a small data drive. The label bore a single word. "Evolution careful," Chen warned as Alex moved to insert it. "Could be infected." "She wants me to see this," Alex replied, connecting the drive to a secured system. The files were encrypted, but her specialized interface cracked them within minutes. What she found made her blood run cold. Research files, medical data, combat footage, all documenting the architect's work, with disabled veterans. But it went deeper than training. There were designs for advanced prosthetics, neural interfaces, combat systems specifically engineered for operators with different disabilities. She's not just building an army. Alex realized she's creating the next stage of military evolution using disabilities. As advantages turning perceived weaknesses into tactical strengths, a new video file opened automatically. The timestamp showed it was from Afghanistan. 5 years ago, Alex recognized the village where she'd lost her legs, but this angle was different. A drone view she'd never seen before. The footage showed her younger self moving through the streets with her team. Then, the IED detonation perfectly calculated. The blast pattern was exact, precise. It wasn't random. Alex said quietly, every detail from the type of explosive to the placement. She designed it specifically for me to create exactly this outcome. The video continued showing something else. Other soldiers in similar situations, different missions, different locations, but the same precise targeting. Each injury calculated, each disability engineered for maximum adaptation potential. How many, she asked Chen. We've identified 47 so far, all disabled veterans, all recruited into specialized programs after their injuries. And those are just the ones we know about. Alex's hands gripped her chairs, controls tightly. She's been playing a longer game than anyone realized. Everything I did in Pine Valley, every technique I developed, I was helping her perfect the process. Her secure phone buzzed another message from the architect. Now you understand. You weren't just my prototype, Alexandra. You were my masterpiece before Alex could respond. Alerts flashed across every screen. The quantum computing facilities were powering up simultaneously. Something big was starting. Multiple cyber attacks detected. An analyst called out military networks. Worldwide are being breached, but the patterns, they're familiar. They're using my infiltration techniques. Alex confirmed, watching the data streams. Everything I developed for undercover work, adapted for digital warfare. The attacks were elegant, precise. Just like the IED that had taken her legs, each breach targeted specific vulnerabilities using methods that seemed obvious in hindsight, but had taken Alex years to perfect. We need to shut them down. Chen insisted, hit all 3 facilities at once. No. Alex said firmly, that's exactly what she wants. These attacks aren't the real threat. They're another test. She's watching how we respond. Learning from our defensive patterns, she wheeled to the central console, her mind racing. The architect had spent years studying her adaptations, learning how she turned disadvantages into strengths. Now it was time to use that against her. Get me a direct line to the Pentagon Cyber Command, Alex ordered, and find every disabled veteran who's been recruited into specialized programs in the last 5 years. It's time we showed the Arch-Detect. She's not the only one who can adapt. Her phone buzzed again. Making your move, Alexandra. Remember, I taught you everything you know about turning weakness into strength. Alex smiled grimly as she typed her response. No, you taught me everything you know, but I've learned a few things on my own. She turned to Chen. Get our people into position, but this time we do it my way. No tactical teams, no special forces. I want disabled veterans ones. We vetted ones. We trust people who understand what it means to adapt. You're building your own army. Chen realized, no, I'm gathering people who've already learned the hardest lesson, that sometimes what looks like weakness is actually power. The architect thinks she can control evolution. Let's show her what real adaptation looks like. As commands went out and operations spun up. Alex studied the quantum facility data. One more time, the architect had spent years watching her, learning from her methods. Now it was time to show her teacher exactly what her star pupil had really learned. The real evolution was about to begin. Quantum facility breach in progress. The tactical display announced as Alex wheeled through the darkened server room, her hand-picked team 12 disabled veterans, each chosen for their unique adaptations, moved silently through the complex. Every one of them had been approached by the architect's recruiters. Every one of them had recognized something wrong in the offer team. Two in position came Sarah Chen's voice through the sea. The former Air Force pilot had lost both arms in a crash, but her neural interface controls let her operate surveillance drones with unprecedented precision, detecting multiple heat signatures in the primary server hub copy that Alex checked her tactical display. The facility's layout was a mirror of her own combat adaptations, corridors, sized for wheel-chair mobility access points at seated height. The architect had built this place using everything she'd learned from studying Alex. Time to show her the lessons weren't complete. Marcus Take Point, Alex ordered the former Marine, had lost his hearing in an explosion, but his other senses had become extraordinarily acute. He moved ahead, feeling vibrations through his prosthetic legs that could detect approaching hostiles before any sensor. The first resistance came exactly where Alex expected a security team, using her own flanking tactics, but she'd spent years developing those methods, learning their weaknesses. Now, she whispered into the sea, Rachel. A former Army sniper who'd lost her right arm emerged from her wheelchair like a coiled spring. Her prosthetic limb stripped of its cosmetic covering revealed a customized shooting. Mount 3 precise shots dropped the security team before they could react. They're copying your old techniques, Rachel observed as they secured the corridor, but they don't understand the adaptations behind them. The architect thinks disability is something to engineer. Alex replied, checking the fallen guards as expected. They were all able-bodied operators trying to mimic methods developed by necessity. She doesn't realize true adaptation comes from within her chair sensors, detected a power surge in the servers ahead. The quantum systems were accelerating, preparing for something big. Alex Chen's voice crackled through her secure calm. We found the architect's endgame. Those systems aren't just for cyber warfare. They're running evolutionary algorithms, analyzing combat data from disabled veterans worldwide. She's not building an army. She's trying to force the next step in human military evolution by creating more people like us. Marcus asked his tactical display, translating the audio to text. No. Alex realized watching the data streams by making disability. The advantage, every injury, every adaptation she engineered, they were experiments. She's trying to prove that traditional military forces are obsolete. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Very good, Alexandra, but you've only seen part of the picture. Come to the main control room. See what evolution really looks like. The message included an image that made Alex's heart stop. Jenny from the cafe in Pine Valley strapped to some kind of medical device. Sensors covered her body, feeding data to the quantum systems. The next phase requires volunteers. The architect's message continued. Your friend was kind enough to assist 30 minutes until the procedure begins. Choose quickly. Alex's hands tightened on her chair's controls. Sarah, get me building schematics. Find me a route to the control room that they won't expect. They've got all obvious approaches covered. Sarah reported her drones mapping security positions. Anything big enough for your chair is being watched. Alex smiled grimly, who said, I needed my chair. She began detaching components from her tactical wheelchair weapons sensors, medical supplies. Her team watched in confusion until understanding dawned. You're going to show them what real adaptation looks like. Rachel said quietly. The architect spent years studying how I fight from this chair. Alex explained, checking her gear. She built this whole facility around those assumptions, but she forgot. Something important. What's that? I wasn't born in this chair. I learned to fight long before Afghanistan. And sometimes she pulled herself out of the wheelchair, her upper body strength evident as she moved with practiced deficiency. Sometimes the best way to adapt is to change the rules entirely. Marcus grinned as he helped distribute her gear. They'll never expect you to come in low, using maintenance shafts and ventilation ducts. Exactly. Rachel, Sarah, you're my eyes above everyone else. Prepare for my signal when I reach the control room. Hit every server node simultaneously. The architect wants to force evolution. Let's show her what real survivors can do. As her team moved into position, Alex began her approach. Years of developing alternative movement techniques served her now. As she navigated spaces too small for any tactical team, the architect had built her security Around defending against wheelchair-bound operators, she hadn't considered that true adaptation meant being able to leave the chair behind. Your friend is quite brave. The architect's voice suddenly filled the corridor. She's been telling me about Pine Valley, about watching you pretend to be helpless. All those years, she understands what we're trying to achieve. You're trying to play God, Alex replied. Knowing the architect could hear her creating disabilities, forcing adaptations. But real evolution doesn't work that way, doesn't it? Look at yourself, Alexandra, everything you've become, every advancement you've made. It all started with that IED I gave you, that gift. No. Alex pulled herself around a corner, closing in on the control room. You took something from me. What I became afterward, that was my choice. My Yushin. She could see Jenny now through a ventilation grate. The medical device looked like something from a nightmare, its purpose all too clear. You're going to her, Alex realized, just like you did to me, to all of us. I'm going to elevate her, the architect corrected. Just as I elevated you, the next stage of human military development requires sacrifice. Alex reached for her, Cal ready to signal her team. But something made her pause. The architect's voice held something familiar, too. Familiar. You're one of us, she said quietly. That's how you knew where to place the IED. You'd been through it yourself. The silence that followed confirmed everything. The architect hadn't just been studying disabled veterans, she was one. And now Alex knew exactly how to stop her. Hello. Alexandra. The architect's voice came from directly ahead as Alex pulled herself into the control room through the maintenance shaft. I wondered if you'd figure it out. The woman standing beside Jenny's medical restraint table wasn't what anyone would expect. Colonel Rebecca Harris, legendary Delta Force operator, presumed killed in action. A decade ago, her uniform sleeve hung empty where her right arm should have been, and a sophisticated prosthetic leg gleamed beneath. Her fatigues, the mission that cost you your arm and leg, Alex said, positioning herself behind a console. It wasn't an accident. Very good. Rebecca smiled. I engineered it just like I engineered your injury. Each loss precisely calculated. Each adaptation carefully monitored, the perfect crucible for evolution. Jenny struggled against her restraints, eyes wide with fear. The medical device hummed ominously, its purpose now clear. It was designed to create specific traumatic injuries, to force the kind of adaptation Rebecca believed in. You were the test case. Alex realized you did it to yourself first. I prove the concept. Traditional military thinking makes us weak, dependent on perfect bodies and conventional tactics, but true strength. Rebecca flexed her prosthetic fingers. True strength comes from overcoming loss, from turning weakness into power, by crippling innocent people, creating an army of disabled veterans, by advancing human evolution. Rebecca's voice rose with zealous intensity. Every subject I chose, every injury I engineered, they all proved my theory. You proved it better than anyone. Alexandra, 3 years in Pine Valley, letting everyone underestimate you. Developing combat techniques. No able-bodied operator could match. Alex's team was in position. She could see their signals on her tactical display. One word would trigger their assault on the facility servers. But she needed to understand why Jenny, why now? Because it's time for the next phase. Rebecca moved to the medical controls individual. Evolution isn't enough. We need to prove that this is the future of warfare. Imagine entire Special Forces units, each operator carefully modified for maximum adaptation, no more waiting for combat injuries to create. Warriors like us, we engineer them perfect, them evolve them. You're insane. I'm inevitable. The quantum systems have proven it. Every simulation shows the same result. Disabled operators consistently outperform traditional forces. We adapt faster. Think differently. Find solutions no one else sees. The only thing holding us back is the belief that we're broken. Jenny's restraints suddenly released. But instead of running, she stood up, moving to Rebecca's side. I'm sorry, Alex, Jenny said quietly. But she's right. I've watched you for 3 years, seen how you turned your disability into strength. I want that power. I choose this evolution. Alex's heart sank as she understood Jenny hadn't been captured. She'd been recruited, convinced by Rebecca's twisted logic that intentional disability was the path to advance NM, the quantum systems. Don't just run simulations. Rebecca continued, they identify optimal candidates, calculate perfect adaptations. Jenny's procedure will be precisely engineered for maximum potential. Just like yours was. You really think I'm your success story? Alex pulled herself up, using the console facing them directly. That the IED that took my legs somehow made me stronger? Look at what you've accomplished, everything you've become. I became this despite you, not because of you. Alex's voice cracked with emotion. You didn't give me strength when you took my legs, you just forced me to find the strength I already had. That's what you never understood about evolution. It doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. Shike her cal now. The facility erupted into chaos as Alex's team struck simultaneously. Servers crashed, power fluctuated, and the quantum systems began to fail. But Rebecca just smiled. You think I didn't plan for this? Every tactic you're using, every strategy I taught you, all of it I made you? No, Alex's voice was calm now. You didn't make me. You just made one critical mistake. What's that? You assumed. The wheelchair was my weakness just like everyone else did. But here's the truth, I never needed it to beat you. Alex moved with explosive speed techniques practiced in secret for years. Rebecca's prosthetic arm whirred as she countered, but she'd trained to fight wheelchair-bound opponents. She wasn't prepared for Alex's ground-based combat style. The fight was brutal. Efficient, two disabled veterans, each having adapted to their limitations. But with fundamentally different philosophies, Rebecca fought to prove her theories about engineered evolution. Alex fought to prove that true strength comes from choice, not force. In the end, it wasn't technology or tactical advantage that decided the battle. It was understanding Rebecca had spent so long trying to perfect human evolution that she'd forgotten its most basic principle. Adaptation comes from necessity, not design. As Rebecca lay subdued, her prosthetics disabled, she looked up at Alex with something like wonder. How I calculated everything planned for every scenario. That's exactly why you failed. Alex secured her restraints. Real. Evolution isn't about following a plan, it's about finding your own path. Jenny stood trembling nearby, Rebecca's influence already fading, as reality set in. Alex, I'm so sorry I believed her. She made it sound so perfect. I know Alex's voice was gentle because sometimes it's easier to believe someone else has the answers than to find them yourself. The facility was secure. Now Alex's team of disabled veterans, having proved that true adaptation comes in many forms, as federal agents swarmed the complex. Alex looked at the quantum computers that had tried to reduce human evolution to mathematical formulas. You know what the real evolution is? She asked Rebecca as agents led her away. It's not about becoming stronger through injury. It's about discovering that strength was there all along. You just have to choose to find it hours later. As the sun rose over the mountains, Alex sat in her wheelchair, watching cleanup teams dismantle the architect's operation. Jenny approached hesitantly. How did you know, she asked, that I was working with her? Because you stopped seeing me as weak? Alex smiled sadly. The real me not. The undercover role, you started seeing the disability as an advantage, just like she did, but that was never the point. What was the point? The disability doesn't make us stronger or weaker. It's just part of who we are. The strength comes from how we choose to live with it. As helicopters arrived to transport Rebecca to a secure facility, Alex thought about evolution. Real evolution. Not the engineered perfection Rebecca had sought, but the messy, unpredictable journey of becoming who you're meant to be. The wheelchair wasn't her advantage or her weakness, it was simply part of her path, and she had chosen how to walk it. One adaptation at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.